My name's Lisa Towles, and I'm with Heart Centered Tech, and I'm going to be interviewing Susan Steinbrecher today. So just a quick intro for those Heart Centered Tech members who will be watching this interview. Heart Centered Tech's mission is about working peer-to-peer to discover visionary business leaders and recognize them for their work and how they're making a difference in their communities with heart-led leadership. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Heart-Centered Tech leader Susan Steinbrecher as part of a series that I'm doing to highlight the wisdom and profile our leaders to help share their knowledge and inspire others. Susan, I'll just say a couple words about you. Susan is the president and CEO of Steinbrecher and Associates, a renowned leadership consultant, teacher, public speaker, and multi-published book author, which we'll talk more about today. And so Susan, I feel like you have so much insight and wisdom to share with the Heart-Centered Tech community. And most importantly, that you've written a book called Heart-Centered Leadership, which is such a wonderful, magical alignment with Heart-Centered Tech's mission. So again, thanks for being with me today, and let's dive in if that's okay.
Absolutely, my pleasure to be with you, Lisa.
Thank you. Okay, so you've built this formidable career and platform on which you've based your coaching and consultation, and it seems to be in part about service to others. So your own service to help others connect to their intrinsic calling, but also inspiring other leaders to do the same for their teams. So I'm curious how you've advised leaders to focus on that service aspect when senior leadership roles so often come with such high expectations for bringing in revenue. So that's that kind of head versus heart, or head plus heart, that you've talked about in some of your teaching.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So first and foremost, and I think we all really recognize that now more than ever, that a business has to make money to survive. I mean, we're not doing anybody any justice if we are not able to turn a profit, because that means we can't afford to have employees. We can't afford to provide the services and the skills that we offer. So of course that has to be there. The difference though is, how do we go about doing that? So it kind of goes back to the old service profit chain. If you take really good care with your associates, they'll take great care of your customer will take care of the profitability of the business. So it's going through that path. I will tell you, running businesses now, this particular business I've had now for 28 years, our consulting and leadership development practice. Prior to that, I was the general manager of a hotel when I was at the ripe age of 25, running a $40 million asset. And what you realize is you can cut a lot of things to make a P&L look good. So, but there's a lot of damage and impact to that potentially, and it's not sustainable. So this is really all about saying, if we come from the right place to begin with, and we are really looking at, are my associates turned on, tuned in, emotionally engaged, and motivated to perform their best, you've really got the best you could possibly ask for as a leader. Now, if you've hired the wrong talent, that's another story. But if you really have people that motivated to want to do their very best for you, you're in a really good spot. And what that creates is commitment versus compliance. So people will comply often out of fear. Oh my gosh, I'll lose my job if I don't, do what my boss asks me to do. But if their heart's not in it, the minute that supervisor turns their back, they're looking for every opportunity to get out of the work. So that's just not a sustainable strategy. And those organizations that really give to those employees and help them feel a part of the organization, empowered, so that they are motivated to work their very best, then you're going to get the very best that you can. And then everybody wins as a result of that. So it's head and heart. I don't think it's either or, it's an and in my mind. And I think it does take both in order to really propel a business forward and get ultimately the most profitability one can. When you've got the head and the heart of every single associate, you're going to get there.
Because they're gonna own it more if they feel it, right? So you're getting that, they're bought in. Yeah, that's really deep wisdom. How has this wisdom been aligned with your books. So I was wondering if you could share a bit how, like, in particular, how you and your message have evolved from the time that you first published Heart-Centered Leadership to Kensho, and then your most recent book, Meaningful Alignment. How do you kind of weave the two together, and how do they help each other? I'm curious about that.
Well, they do. It's an interesting, not that it was designed that way, but it's been an interesting build over time. So the first edition of Heart Center Leadership came out like 18, 17 years ago. And it was interesting because we put out this book, my co-author, Dr. Joel Bennett, and I put out this book called Heart Center Leadership. And people say, you have lost your mind. I mean, the word heart and leadership in the same sentence just
Right.
really doesn't exist. And to
Right.
put it on your cover, like people thought, oh my gosh, what does that mean? Is this spiritual? Is this religious? What is this?
New Age.
Yeah, new agey and all that kind of
Uh-huh.
stuff. And I said, listen, the problem is the word leadership and heart need to be in the same sentence, and that's what's wrong. And so we're going to put this work out. There's going to be people that it will not resonate with, and I'm okay with that. We're not changing the name. It's going to be for the right people, but we hope we provide some inspiration around, look at this and look how profitable your business can be if you lead in this heart-centered way. So it sort of started that way.
That's amazing. Can I stop you there? I
Sure.
think the fact that you are so self-directed, saying, no, I'm not changing the name. Yeah, it might not match up with what people are looking at right now, but I mean, that's so pioneering, and that's really truly innovation. You know, you putting a stake in the ground saying, no, this is called heart-centered leadership. It might not be a thing right now, but I'm making it a thing right now. So
Exactly.
right on.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I mean, I will tell you, I was a little nervous because I thought, okay, I don't know what clients are going to say. I'm not really sure what the world's going to say. But you know what? I'm going to go for it. And if I have to explain it, I'll explain it. But we're going to put the work out. So we did. And the reason I even came up with that name in the first place is where all this started is I walked away from a meeting. I'm an executive coach. I was coaching an executive of a company. And I remember walking out of that meeting and going, oh my gosh, this does not have to be so difficult. If these guys could just get these 8 things, and I wrote down these things. Well, those 8 became 7, and those 7 things became our 7 principles and virtues of heart center leadership. So that's kind of how that was born, if you will.
Okay.
You know, fast forward in time. So now it's recession, 2008, 2009, 10, things are looking terrible. And I'm sitting here going, okay, wait a minute. No, there's a silver lining to all of this. This is an invitation for us to go, what's important to me? What really matters? What is my calling? What do I want to do? And so Kensho is a Japanese word for awakening. That's what the word Kensho means. And there's a long subtitle I won't bother you with now, but what I wanted to do was for people to wake up and recognize that, yes, these are challenging times, but it's also the time for you to get clear on what you want to be doing in this world, who you want to be, and what you want to do. And so what I did with that particular book, totally different platform. Each of the 20 chapters are standalone independent chapters. You could pick up this book and say, I don't care about these topics. I'm going to chapter 10 and it's a standalone chapter. But the collection of the 20 are all about taking care of self, taking care of others, and taking care of our planet. That is the 3. And I uncovered people all over the world underneath rocks that no one's ever heard of, and just basically interviewed them and told their story. Wow. So that was a big part of that work. And again, people thought, what is this Kensho thing? But I insisted on the title because I wanted them to know, what is Kensho? Go look it up. Oh, it's a Japanese word for awakening. You know, maybe not a popular title again, but people loved it. And then my final book just recently is Meaningful Alignment. And the reason we put Meaningful Alignment out into the world is we've been studying for the last 7 years how people really, really struggle to have the challenging conversation, often emotionally charged, but with emotional resilience. Like, can they hang in there and sort of handle the tension in the moment, So that composure and that resilience, so that they can gain alignment with this other individual. But on top of that, can you help facilitate the motion coming from the other person? So that person's beginning to flip out. What, if anything, can you do? And we just saw a huge gap in skill. So we have been developing for the last 5 years a model and assessment off that model. We've been developing training, and we're launching our first meaningful alignment virtual training literally next week. So we felt like these were the times, each of those times. And oh, by the way, in between all that, my publicist came to me and said, oh, well, now there's 30,000 books with the name Heart and Leadership in it. You were 10 years ahead, you need to republish. So we republished the second edition about 4 years ago. So it's crazy, but you know what? The point of all of this is we want to get the word out. We want people to recognize that you have to focus on what you can control and influence and let go of the rest. And you have to do things that's going to be taking care of enriching yourself, because the more you do that, the more you can be of service to other people. And that's really a common thread of all three.
And that's what you care about the most. And that
Yeah.
comes through. I get that. I think what you've done, and really what you did a long time ago, is you've identified a gap. I mean, leaders are business leaders, especially topmost, like C-suite leaders. They're all out there, all on their own. I'm connected to a couple of like leadership peer groups, and there are so many like the strongest, most talented business leaders I know. They're not getting support from anyone, and they're not connected to anyone, and they need that self-care. And so you're finding a gap to kind of teach them. So you mentioned emotional resilience. That's a good segue to my next question, where I want to talk about fear, which is such a hot button when it comes to leadership. And yeah, so I know you published an article on Inc.com about success blockers and career-related challenges. You specifically said in that article, this was really interesting, high-stakes conversations are really like a common challenge among all business leaders. I mean, we've all had them. The emotionally charged, difficult conversations you were just talking about, and like business leaders not being prepared for those. So do you consider controlling one's fears to be part of like the container of emotional IQ? And how do you think that lack of preparation plays a role in that challenge?
Thank you. And to answer your question, yes, I do. And the lack of preparation is a huge part of it. So when I say preparing, I don't just mean, what are my notes, getting clear on what my goal is of the conversation I need to have. First of all, I mean, if you can't clearly identify what you want as an outcome of that conversation, and no, it's not to tell the person you're pissed off. Okay. If you can't clearly identify what is the absolute best thing that can happen by the end of that conversation, you are not ready to have it. And I find people jump into these conversations and they're just expressing how they feel about things, but they're not guiding it to, this is the best possible outcome, by the way, for you and for me. That's my intention. My intention is to hold the vessel and give you the space to be really heard and really understood. And for you to do the same for me, so that we can truly co-collaborate on getting the best outcome for whatever this goal is. And that's a really important piece, because unless we put ourselves in a space where we're fully present, what we call mindful presence, right? That mindfulness, when you're fully present and mindful of what's happening with the individual and responding, then you're not going to build enough safe and trust, because they're going to feel like you're disconnected, you're not really there, you don't really care. So then their defense mechanism goes up, and then it's going to get harder and harder and harder to get to a goal because of that. So this is a big part of meaningful alignment. We teach all the skills to do that, but it's one of those things where the lack of preparation on clarity of goal, the lack of preparation mentally as well, like predicting, how do I think this person's going to respond? And here's the ugly truth. You're bringing into this new conversation, you think it's about the X topic, and yes, and it's about all the drama and history of conversations you've also had with that person. You are mentally bringing that into this one. And guess what? So are they. So you think you're here to talk about, even playing field, it's all level and it's all new. No, they're bringing in all the history that they didn't go well. Those conversations didn't go well. That is front and top of their mind. And you're going to have to be prepared to counteract that immediately in the very first step of the conversation. So preparation is a huge part of success. Getting our body ready. I always recommend doing at least a 5-minute meditation prior, getting really neutral emotion, grounded, centered, calm, so that you can be the open vessel is important. And the worst thing that I see happen time and time again, and I get it, but it's just something that's got to stop, is that people are in from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. They're back to back to back to back to back. So they're not really going into one like this really prepared at all.
Exactly.
They're not even there. They're not even there. And then they're caught off guard when somebody says something to them that they didn't really prepare for. I had an idea this might go this direction, and now they're caught off guard, and it just blows up, right? So and the fear aspect of that is sometimes people are very conflict avoidant. I find that a lot. People can be they can say all day long they're not, but the truth is, can you have one of these kind of conversations with that emotion, composure, and the true willingness to hear this other person out with an open vessel, not rehearsing what you're going to already say and not rehearsing what your case is, but can you truly listen to their case and truly go, all right, I never would have thought of that. I need to at least be open to exploring that. And that takes preparation. It just does.
Preparation, and also like good emotional awareness too.
Yes.
To kind of deal with your own stuff so that you can make space for someone else. I like how you mentioned schedule in that. That's something that that I see in myself, and I see with other business leaders at my organization, is that it's like we're dragged around by our schedule. Our schedule is here and we're there, and they're pulling us on a string. Okay, come on, we're going here now. All right, now here's the next one. Rather than getting out ahead of it and being proactive and organized. And I'm super organized, and I still feel dragged around by my schedule often, and I still don't get that 5 minutes to prepare before each one. So I mean, yeah, it takes a lot to kind of pull all those strings together, and that's where your teaching comes in. Yeah. All right. Another good segue. Now I want to talk about power, which is another like huge thing that we've already been talking about in this landscape. So I was listening to your Positivity Strategist podcast, and you said something really provocative there. You said you gain power by giving it away, and that's a wonderful statement that really challenges all of our traditional understandings of power, which is about authority and kind of ownership and singularity, like it's mine and not yours, not based on sharing. So I love how you've kind of turned that on its side. When thinking about like power struggles in the workplace, can you share some ideas for how someone can transition mentally from a point of low self-esteem to an empowered state of mind, so that they can start getting ahead of situations and start taking control of these conversations that they're having?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, it is a lot of preparation, as we mentioned, really, being clear on the goal, being clear on anticipating the response and reaction, rehearsing, practicing how you might respond in the right way, use a trusted colleague to do that with. So for sure, that's part of it. The self-esteem thing is a huge bucket, that to address. But let me just say this, that one builds esteem and when they build confidence. So how does one come across more confident? How does one feel more confident? And I look at that and I say, all right, this is where some introspection and reflection really comes in to say, okay, what am I really good at? And what have I been told I'm really good at? What is sort of my sweet spot or my go-to or my significant offering to others? And how can I leverage that further? And then of course, you can't be good at all things. You try to surround yourself with other folks that have the areas that you don't have, but you'll gain sort of the muscle of practice by focusing on that is looking for the opportunities to leverage that, to put that into action and to leverage that. That helps you build that much more confidence. And on the areas where you feel like I'm not confident, I don't feel good about this, you've got to put a plan together with what will you need to do to get yourself to a place where you feel prepared or confident, or that you're adding value, or whatever that might be. So I kind of go down that angle with that. There's a lot of different ways to approach the self-esteem aspect, but it's a great example. I mean, I was coaching a woman yesterday, and she was talking about a presentation she gave, and she's normally right on top of the money, but she was in a situation where she said, "Oh my gosh, I'm in the middle of this thing, and I'm about ready to hyperventilate." Like, she had one of those moments, and her boss kept looking at her like, "What's going on? Like, you do this every day." But she had that. And I asked her, I said, "Okay, we're going to unpack this, and we're going to rewind back to the moment you felt that happen. What were you doing, saying, thinking, and feeling? What was the internal chatter?" And she had a hard time identifying, but she was, the more she talked, the more I was able to pull some pieces out. And I said, "Oh, okay. The internal chatter is, these supervisors don't like me. They're here to beat me up. The internal chatter is, I'm really, really nervous. The internal chat," right? So we identified the things that are not going to serve you during that particular situation. And for her, I said, effective speaking is 3 P's. It's planning, it's preparation, and it's practice. Well, to come to find out, she didn't prepare at all. She ran into that meeting with a 5-minute window. And so, of course, she wasn't settled. She wasn't grounded. She wasn't feeling on top of her game. And so she set herself up for failure, not by any poor intention, of course. But this is where those little things begin to really make a difference in building that that empowerment and that confidence.
Interesting. And sorry, we don't have much time left, so I want to go on. I want to get all these questions in because you're such a wealth of knowledge. So in the context of employee engagement in the workplace, looking at a business leader that manages employees and even some that manage managers, so they have kind of 2 levels. How do you advise business leaders if they're having an issue dealing with disengaged staff? So they might like have everything together as a business leader, but it's just not making it for their staff. Their staff's like just complying, as you put earlier. I mean, they're putting a check in every box, but they're just not owning what they're doing, and they just don't care that much. What do they do in that case?
Yeah, very good point. Number one, you've got to get to the cause behind it. There's always a cause behind it, because people, in my opinion, and this is one of the Heart Center leadership principles, is don't judge or assume, come to understand. And what I say is that people do not jump out of bed in the morning with the intention to disappoint. Now, there might be a few exceptions to that, but most people really want to show up and do a good job. I mean, they want to create value. They want to give back. They want to be of service. So there's a reason there's a disconnection. We got to find the reason behind that. So what I've done in organizations to help a leader obtain that, I've gone in and I've run focus groups. And I've done small roundtable discussions with every level of the organization. Tell me about your work. Tell me about your job. What's great about this place? What's not so great about this place? And I start picking up pieces. So a leader can do that by doing, we called it breakfast with a boss, a very informal setting. Right now with COVID, it's difficult. I get it, but you could still do through Zoom, small representative groups. Just to start getting your finger on the pulse a little bit. On top of that, you run things like a climate survey to understand what's going on in the climate. I promise you, if you look, there will be patterns. If it's one division only, there's probably something going on with the leadership of that division. If it's company-wide, there's something else going culturally. So the more that you can do the research and do the due diligence and the work and identify, then you start saying, all right, here's what we heard, and make sure you're ready to do this. Here's what we're committed to doing. Don't say you're committed to doing something if you're really not, because that's the worst thing you can do, is raise the level of expectation, and then everything dies and nobody even knows whatever happened to that interview I did, whatever happened to that climate survey I did, or whatever. So be prepared to be able to map out a plan and a strategy to counteract some of the things that you're hearing through the research. But there's always a reason to do that. And it usually gets down to the very core of, I want to feel appreciated, valued, listened to, cared about, empowered, trusted, almost every single time. And what I do with folks is I always say, if you think I'm wrong about that, I want you to think about the best boss you ever had in your career. Just that person comes to their mind in 10 to 15 seconds typically. And then I say, now tell me the behaviors of that boss. And due to those behaviors, tell me the impact it had on you personally. I've done that 1,000 times in workshop settings. The list is always the same. It's always, they trusted me, they valued me, they cared about, they appreciated me, they treated me like a whole human being with a life outside of work. It's always that list, always. I never hear great at P&L management, great at goal setting, and those managers were good at that. And I even asked, were they also good at that? Yes. Why didn't it make the list? You didn't say anything on that list. Right?
Just not important to them.
Well, because it's how that leader made them feel is what's resonating. And then they were inspired and motivated to do their best for that leader as a result. And then the impact was, you've got an engaged workforce.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you share any survival tips or techniques for business leaders to boost their confidence and kind of reinvigorate their passion after a career-related setback? So I'm not sure what I mean by setback.
Well, it could be, I just got furloughed. How come I was the one furloughed? Or I was let go. How come I was the one let go? Or
that's an extreme example. Yeah.
Right now, especially, there's tons of those, right? Unfortunately. And because somebody was selected on the list. How come I was the one selected on the list? And they can't help but go there in their head, right?
Or what about something like a disappointment? So like a promotion that someone else got and they didn't get, and they're feeling kind of ignored, marginalized, not quite what they thought they were in terms of how valued they are. What if we thought about that as the
I love that example specifically because I think a lot of people have experienced that in their life, right? In their career. So here's the thing, as hard as it is to do, what you really need to do is to look at the person who got promoted and start asking the questions, how is it possible that they did? What is going on? What do I see this person display? How do I see this person show up? How do I see this person manage situations? How do I see this person, and now do an honest, authentic inventory of self. How would I rate myself on those things 1 to 5 versus how I'm rating this person 1 to 5? You've got to step back and be very objective about this, but there's a reason this person was selected and you were not. Now, unless it's something really weird, it's personal, whatever, who knows? I don't know how to deal with those things because those are one-offs. But the majority of the time, the truth is this other person is displaying habits, behaviors, and practices that are different than yours, period. And the sooner you can start to unpack that and understand what that is, the sooner you can actually learn from that and actually make a decision, and it is a decision, whether you want to do some of those things or not. And so I say that because I've had leaders I've coached that the reason I'm coaching them, they're beginning to derail in their career and they really thought their next job was going to be X, and they've been given this feedback. And so instead of embracing and go, wow, I really need to take a look at this, instead they go to sort of the negative place of, well, that person didn't deserve it. Well, somebody thought they deserved it.
Yeah, and how much of that deserve aspect relates to visibility? I mean, we can only we're only as good as we visibly display to that external world. So I mean, if we're doing awesome things and saying and feeling and driving awesome things, if we're not being visible about kind of showing and showcasing those metrics to people who matter to us, right?
Absolutely. And I find it more with female leaders than male leaders. And there's, all kinds of reasons for this, but especially I find, it can be all, of course, but what I find is people hesitate to do what I call the positive PR, the positive personal PR, because they'll have a belief system sitting there, and we uncover belief systems in our executive coaching. We literally get underneath the hood and say, these belief systems are running your show. And it's showing up in your leadership style. And here's the connection between this belief you took on when you were 4 or whenever it was, and how you're showing up today. So we make those correlations and they get the big ahas like, oh my gosh, now I get it. But in a situation like that, for example, I had one executive say to me, I just don't do corporate politics. I'm like, okay, I get you don't do corporate politics, but I want you to look at this a little bit differently. Right now, it's like, I don't do, well, everybody that's getting the promotions do corporate politics. And I'm not basically saying embracing that. What I am saying is, what is a way that you can showcase your work in a way that's appealing to you? And I don't care if you're in a meeting, when we can meet in person, when we were in a meeting,
Right.
and you were literally at the coffee break talking about a cool project that you're involved with that you just love, the fact that you're involved in the project. Well, the person didn't know you were involved in the project, and it's a high profile project. It's literally can be that simple. It doesn't have to be you go around showboating. You look for the ways to get it out there. You're part of something. You volunteer for the task force. You volunteer for the committees. People keep people where they see value. If you provide value to me and to this organization, I'm going to keep you, period. And the rest is all sort of part of it.
How much do you think social media is playing an impact on leadership success? And the reason why I ask that is I've known a number of C-suite business leaders that felt like they just didn't do social media, and they didn't think it was important, and they didn't invest any time in it, and I felt like they were really missing out on an opportunity. But looking at it another way, there's huge risk there, right? I mean, if they're up here in an organization, everything they say and do is going to be looked at under a microscope. So I think that might play into the fear. How does what do you feel about social media?
It is a genie that will probably never go back in the bottle. So we better just figure out, I don't necessarily love it, but I'm all over it because I have to for my business. Okay. So here's the power of using it. Okay. So maybe you're not on Instagram. Maybe you are as a CEO or a C-suite level leader, but at least be on LinkedIn. Okay. At least that is a professional business site. Pick the one that you can stomach or whatever. But the power of it, I mean, here's a perfect example. The CEO of an organization did a video on of basically they were about ready to furlough thousands of employees. He was in the hospitality industry, and he was in the middle, unfortunately, of battling cancer. And he chose to be on video to send a message to his employees and to those in the world, because he was a very high profile CEO of a very high profile company. And he started with, because his head was bald, and he started with, my publicist told me, my communications expert, something like that, I don't remember exactly, told me that it may not be a good idea for me to come on camera with my head bald, but I'm going to do it because I want to get this message out. Well, immediately you're like, I love this guy. Okay.
Yeah.
And he got so much press. I mean, thousands of hits. It's got shared everywhere. Why? Because he's the leader that's showing the vulnerability and still wants to get the message out.
Right.
And
That's
so
amazing.
versus someone who's, I don't want to be on social media. And it's like, well, no, you can do the recording if you want to really check it. There's ways to do it.
That's a great story. Wow. So we have 2 minutes left. I wondered if you might talk about a challenge that you faced that made you kind of rethink your direction or pivot to a new focus area. And then what did you use to kind of lift yourself up from that challenge?
Oh gosh. We all go through multiple challenges, but I mean, the one that's honestly coming to mind is current. I mean, the whole COVID thing has taken our business and just dumped it upside down. I mean, it just has. I mean, who's spending money on leadership development and coaching and training, all of that kind of stuff. And it's starting to get better now. But I mean, literally, we were like, wow, everything just came to a complete stop. So we're like, okay, I've been in business 28 years, never experienced this. How do we want to do this? So the thing that, there's days when I was stressed and scared and, oh my gosh, what am I going to need to do? And what do I do with my employees? What do I do? How do I do this? And we have a very small team. So I rest assured that's an easier decision for me than those leaders dealing with so much. Anyway, bottom line is I do 30 minutes of meditation a day. I made sure that practice was taking place. It kept me much more grounded. I did lots of self-care. And then I said, we're going to change the direction of what we do. And we took all our in-person workshops and put it to a virtual experience. And now we're launching all the virtual. You got to do it. You know, what are you going to do?
Yeah, that's awesome. We have less than a minute left. So I just wanted to take a few minutes and thank you. And just thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and expertise. And I look forward to diving into your third book, Meaningful Alignment. I'm really excited about that one. And I hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
You did a great job. Appreciate it.
Thank you.